Hey folks, this is Jay Papasan, co-author of the book. Welcome to our third Thursday of the month where we do a free webinar. This month I get to be your host. We're going to talk about recovering your routines after the summer break. So some of you are probably joining us. I know at least one person's in the car with their kids, and I know that when we break our rhythm, it can be really hard to reclaim it. So something I can't remember us ever addressing before, and I wanted to tackle it this week. But kind of before we dive in, I'll give you a quick outline. It's probably only going to be about 45 minutes unless you'll have tons of questions. But the main content will be over probably in the first 35 to 40 minutes, and then it'll be content driven by you and your questions. I want to really quickly recapture for those that are new to the book. It's funny, last night I was teaching to about 70 entrepreneurs. About half the room had read it and about half had not. And I always find that even if we're going over the basics again, if you haven't heard the basics in a while, you're in a new place and you experience them differently. I know that's the case for me. Each time I come back to this book year after year, I'm in a different place and I have brand new ahas about the material. So very quickly, we'll hit what I kind of think is the essence of the one thing for anybody who's new or a guest here. And then I want to dive into the topic of the month. To kick things off, I'm going to ask you a question because, right, this is a book about powerful questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, for the next 40 minutes or so, how prepared are you to be present and focus so that you can learn? With 10 being that you are all in, your phone's off, you're taking notes, and 1 is you've got a screen open with TikTok already. Lots of 10s. Oh, I see our coaches. I see Sue. I see Monica. I guess you better put 10s, right? If you're going to be our examples. I love it. 10s, 10s. Thank you, Michael. Sharon, there we go. That's a good, honest answer. You're about halfway there. I got it. Maybe you're watching at work. Maybe you know that you might have to get pulled away. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining and being here. And we'll try to pull as much of this out as we can. I'll keep it simple. I'll keep it direct. And we've got our team. I've got Chris and Andrea and Carly here. If you've got a question, use the chat. And if I don't get to it, one of our team will. All right. So really quickly, I'll start sharing my slides. There we go. Chris, give me a nod if you can see that. You're right in front and center.
Good to go.
All right. So if we are looking at kind of the core model of what we do here, some of you know that we've been rebuilding kind of the company from the ground up. We've been really focused on making sure that everything we do has value. And a part of that is we brought on a brand new head coach this year, Jordan Freed. He's also my personal coach. And we had a lot of debates with Chris and the training team about how exactly are we going to approach our core training around the book. And we've come up with this, we call it the TOT approach, the one thing approach, and it's just 5 steps. We're going to cast a vision. We're going to identify our priorities. We're going to create a plan, take action, and evaluate results. We're fundamentally a training and coaching company. So if we aren't evaluating results, like how do we know if we're doing the best thing? How do we know if we're on track? And we love with the coach to give us perspective on from the outside the box. I always say Jordan's fond of saying to me, Jay, you can't read the label from inside the box. We don't often have honest perspective on our own performance. And whether it's our coach, it's a peer, our boss, an accountability partner, it's always good to have another person's eyes on how we finish. With those results in hand, you can start all over again. Do we need to change our vision? Have our priorities changed? Has our plan changed based on our last results? And do we need to take different action? It's not super complicated, but it is 5 steps. The 2 and 3 steps, I'll tell you, we really debated. Do you make a plan first and then identify priorities within it? For those who've been living this book a long time, you might get that debate because you know that priorities are a part of our one-page business plan. And the reality is, whenever we teach this at our goal-setting retreat, which is coming up, we always start with our purpose and core values. What is it that's most important to you should be what we are creating a plan around, and that's where we ended up. But know that priorities do live in a couple of spots. The core of the book is this concept called Paretos Principle. It's also known as the 80-20 rule. I love this idea. I remember, I mean, I've been, I guess, learning about and teaching this for close to 24 years now, but it's the idea that the minority of what we do will generate the majority of our results. And crazily enough, man, it comes out 80-20 a lot of the time. I don't know if y'all have had experience with this. When we look at our production within our company, little over half of it is done by the top 10%. So it's not exactly those proportions, but you see that it is a true minority that gives us the disproportionate results we are looking for. And I think this is like a law of gravity. This is the law of business results. Like, I don't know exactly how to explain gravity, but I trust that it's true. I know that Chris knows all about gravity. He used to jump out of airplanes for a living. And he knows that he's not going to jump out of a helicopter or an airplane without a parachute because he knows that gravity is going to kick in. I believe as much in this Pareto's principle as I do the law of gravity. That if I can trust that the minority of what I do, will give me the majority of my results, it gives me so many benefits, folks. It allows me to focus on fewer things, which right there in this busy day and age is a huge relief, and trust that those fewer things that I'm actually dealing with will get me closer to where I want to go. The way we teach it, right? 20% is not quite all the way there. If you keep saying, what's the 20% of the 20% of the 20%, eventually you get to one number, always one. And that's really what differentiates our program from everything else. I had a lady last night. I was at an event and she was asking a question. She goes, am I doing it wrong? Every day I identify my top 3 priorities. And I feel like I'm doing pretty good. And I don't know about you, but I remember that concept coming from Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. It's probably right behind me, right there. It's on the shelf. And it was a very important book for me when I read it. And he talked about every day he started with his top 3. What are his top 3 today? And I told her that so much about the one thing approach is trying to optimize our approach so that over time we get the maximum results. We are less likely to have regrets, and we are more likely to get the extraordinary that we're seeking. And I said the difference between 3 priorities and 1 may not seem like a lot. But in my experience, if you get someone to narrow down their priorities to 3, they often will not start with their number 1. They will start with whatever is easiest and fastest to do. I don't know about you, but when I have a long list of things, I'm very tempted to cross off the things that I can cross off fastest, that I can do the easiest, because what I want is not to do the most important thing. I want to do the thing that gives me relief. I want my list to be shorter. So if on a daily basis, we're playing this game of check off, as we wrote in the book, playing the game of checking things off like that is being productive, we're not really focusing on the main thing. Whereas the other person who only identifies their number 1 every day, even if they don't complete it, even if they make partial progress, I believe, and I think a lot of research and evidence will show that over time, they're going to pull away from the other person, even though they have a very good method. Every day they identify their top 3. I would tell you that starting with your number 1 is the core of what we do. Yes, you have other stuff to do. We want you to start with your number 1 priority. The little differences add up. I think that, is it James Clear that talks about 1% better every day? I'm crediting it to him, but it may not be him. But when you think about just getting a little bit better every day over time, that's where we get those exponential results. I'm going to go back to our presentation. Here we go. So you keep narrowing it down till you get to your number 1. Well, how do we absolutely know that's the right thing? We have the focusing question. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or necessary? It's a total mouthful. If you've got a hard copy of the book, though, you'll know why this is so important. On the back of every book, we put the question. We could have put testimonials. We could have put blurbs. We could have put more accolades. The book sold a little over 3.5 million copies today, 42 languages. But what we wanted people to do more than anything else when they put this book down is ask this question. If you could only form one habit Hello, Andrew. You just happened to be right on the center of my screen. It's been a while. If I can only do one thing for you, Andrew, I want you to answer this question every day when you wake up. What's the one thing I can do today such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? It's a very powerful question. And I found that people really do get to their answers. And I was afraid of that. I was afraid when we were writing the book that people would not know their answers. But where do we go when we know what we need to do? We go to our calendar. The act of putting our priorities on the calendar, there is good research that shows that you're about 3 times more likely to do the thing the moment you ask, when and where am I going to do it? That's simple, folks. They asked a group of folks to exercise for 20 minutes a day. One group was the control group. One group was given a motivational pamphlet that said, if you exercise for 20 minutes, you will have all these health benefits. And the last group was given an intention drill. They got the motivational pamphlet, but they also had to say when and where they would exercise for 20 minutes a day. And the difference was really striking. The control group and the motivation group that got the pamphlet exercised about 35 to 38% of the time. The group that took the one extra step of thinking about when they would actually do it, where they would actually do it, that extra step of navigating their future time to figure out if it was even possible, were 3 times more likely to exercise. So whatever your one thing is, the simple act of putting it on your calendar is a huge, huge plus towards you're actually doing it. And I have a theory around this. I think 99% of the time when we're saying yes to something, we haven't thought through all of the things that we'll have to say no to make that happen. We haven't even considered for a heartbeat all of the other yeses that are dancing around the edges of our calendar. Most of us here, maybe because you're here, you're not, because you're some of the one thing faithful, our one thing family, or you're seeking that, but you've got this idea that you have to be careful and guarded with your yeses. We wrote in the book that every yes has to be guarded by 1,000 no's. Most of everyone we know is overcommitted. They have more opportunities than they can take advantage, much less all the things that they're obligated to do. So if we can just pause for a moment before we say yes and think about, do I actually have the time? Do I actually have the ability to actually follow through on this thing that I choose to do or want to do? That extra bit of thought will usually save us from making a commitment we can't keep, or allow us to make it, but thoughtfully. You know what? I'm going to have to cancel on Andrea. We're not going to go walk the dog this Saturday because that's the only time I could do it. So thinking it through, that simple act of time blocking. Well, when we are time blocking, I'll see if our coaches can jump in. When you're time blocking your priorities, what is the very first thing we put on our time block? Use the comments and let me know what you think it is. What's the first thing we time block? Vacation. It's right there in the middle of the screen. You know, the last time, Angel, it took us about 3 minutes to get to that answer. So thank you for leading the way. We want to put our vacation on the calendar first because it's like putting a boulder in the stream. If you're going to do extraordinary things, you're going to need energy to do it. And that means you're going to need to rest and restore. If you work out, if you exercise, you kind of intuitively know that if you don't eat the right things and you don't get enough rest, you can run your body into the ground. But if you get the right nutrition and you get the right amount of rest, your muscles actually get stronger and you get stronger. So the very first priority is not our one thing. It's actually time off. Time block your time off. 2, we're going to time block our one thing. And we're going to do it in the morning. I don't need to unpack the whole book here, but there's a lot of research that says that when we don't always want to do the thing that we need to do, we're more likely to do it in the morning. We have more willpower, the mental energy to say yes to what we need to do early in our day. And the question, I'll make sure on the comments, there's almost always a night owl on here somewhere. Does it have to be in the morning? I'm an owl, I'm not a lark. As far as I've been able to tell from the research, morning is relative to your schedule. If you are like my 18-year-old son, Morning means sometime between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. College kids, but that's where it is. But that's when he wakes up, but he also goes to bed later. It's getting about, I actually think he gets more sleep than I do. He just is on a different cycle. He is most likely to do the work he needs to do in those first 4 to 6 hours after he wakes up. So don't fret so much about having to be part of the 5 a.m. club. The 5 a.m. club, focus on starting your days with your number one priority. Launch it with intention and let that carry you through. And I think, there we go. I'm going to stop right here. I'm now going to transition to our main topic. I want to see your comments, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. This summer, you took a vacation. If you've got school-age kids, maybe your routines changed afterwards. I'd like to see in the comments, what changed for you over this summer? Did you change jobs? Did you change commutes? What changed around your life that created maybe a challenge for you and how you can stay on track for your goals? You're welcome, Angel, on the clarification. Okay, so you started a new job, unplanned trips. Well, Karen, I don't even know how to take unplanned trips. I like to travel and I wish I got to take more of them. So unplanned sounds like a surprise trip, but maybe this is work. And so maybe it's not as much fun. So you worked from home 2 days a week, then maybe that's new to you. Okay, so Alex, Sue, like literally the daylight has changed, so it has impacted your schedule. Oh, Monica, travel baseball. There's two kinds of parents I feel the most sympathy for. Parents with kids in swimming and parents with kids in baseball, and maybe travel soccer too. It feels like it's a lot. Running back and forth to practice, running back and forth to travel and away games. It seems like a very big burden if they don't have their driver's license. So I feel you there. I saw a smirk from Andrea that's got two sporting kids, I believe tennis and wrestling. She knows what that's like. Motorhome for a month, Renee. Okay, that sounds awesome, but it does change everything about your routines. All right, I can't read all of these, but thank you so much for sharing. So one of the things we have to ask is, we do, a lot of these things are actually fun. We got a new job. We got the opportunity to work from home. We got to travel. We got to take a break. That vacation that was our number one priority in terms of our mental health. So why is that a bad thing? Well, we're interrupting our habit, and then we have to get back on it. And so we looked for this answer when we were writing the book. And it wasn't until I interviewed Gretchen Rubin many years later. She wrote a book called Better Than Before, so I can highly recommend it. It is a supplemental book on forming habits. She taught us that it is much harder to restart a habit than it is to create one to begin with. And that kind of blew my mind. So wait, what do you mean? So I was jogging and regularly every morning, or I was exercising regularly every morning, and I take a 3-week break, and I realize my rhythm is broken. Why would it be harder to restart an established habit than to begin it from the very beginning? Does anybody have a theory? Anybody have ideas?
New is interesting.
There you go. Who was that?
Justin.
Justin, thank you. That was one of the things she cited. There is no novelty when we're restarting. Excuse me. Don't want to give it away. There we go. There's no novelty when you're starting over. So a lot of times when we're going to start a new habit, I'm going to train for a marathon, I'm going to do X. We have a lot of enthusiasm for it. And so we look up and we're like, wow, I'm going to share it with my friends. I start talking about it, and that creates a lot of social injuries. That's a great answer. What else do we have? I'm not sure what deception means, Sylvie, but if you can explain that, let me know.
Jay, could it be
Yeah,
that
I
we
meant, sorry.
That's
I
okay.
meant you could be deceived that you kind of, you had a great habit and then you let it go.
Oh, okay.
Pardon my French.
No, well, and you say that and literally because you're actually tuning in from Montreal where you speak French. So I love that. So you've deceived yourself. Maybe your habit wasn't as strong as you thought. Chris, what were you going to add?
I was going to say that perhaps you've set a new benchmark for yourself or a high water line that is part of your identity, and you feel discouraged that you're not at that place.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna interpret that. I think that's actually really on the right track. And I think the heart of the issue is it's not new. And then a little bit of what Chris is saying, because Sylvie might be right. Maybe it wasn't a good habit, but it's true even if it was. And what happens is you start looking at the gap between where you are today and where you were before you broke the habit.
Mm.
You start focusing on, I used to do this every day, and now it's a struggle. When you were beginning the habit, what did you focus on? Wow, I was never exercising, and now I am exercising. It's the whole gap in the gain that Dr. Benjamin Hardy used that language. I love that language. When we focus on the gap, we tend to demotivate ourselves. We tend to get caught up in this idea that we're failing somehow, even though we're doing the right thing. And we're actually making progress. Maybe we're making progress rebuilding our habit faster than we built it originally, but it doesn't feel like the progress it is. Does that make sense? So this idea of us focusing on the wrong aspect, habits fall apart. Man, I've been super transparent. I can remember 2019, came out of surgery. I had a staff of about 7 or 8. I was coming back to the workforce, and they ended up changing everything in our work. And I went from having 7 people to 44 overnight. Every habit I had for my life, every system I had for my life broke instantaneously and simultaneously. And I found myself having to do the slog of what are the new habits I need for my new reality. And so everybody shows up there. Sometimes it's because we slacked off, and sometimes it's because life just happens to us. But we need to change our mental mindset around how we got there and what it means about us. So I'm going to go real quick. We're going to take a quick pause, and I want to share the fun announcement that I almost messed up by sharing it a little bit too early. Let's go back. Oh, there we go. Everybody, almost everyone that I talked to said one of their favorite things that we used to do regularly in our community was a coaching spotlight. If y'all, does anybody here remember back when Jeff Woods would go on Facebook and just spotlight somebody and coach them in the moment? Does anybody remember what that was like? Yeah, I see one hand going up over there. Yeah. What's really cool and what our customers have told us is that what they heard again and again every single week was they got to hear how someone else, not the author, not Chris, one of our coaches and lead trainers, not someone that they get this idea that they have a special advantage. Because I know that that's easy to do. It's like, oh, they work at the one thing. It must be easier for them. But now that goes away because you're talking to someone just like you who's trying to do their 411. They're trying to honor their time blocks, right? They're trying to do the same things that you are, and you're hearing their strategies. You're hearing how they're maybe not hitting the mark, and then a coach is getting them on track. And so we're bringing this back next Wednesday. If you scan the QR code, you're already going to get invited. It'll be next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Jordan Freed, our head coach, he's actually my head coach, is going to offer up a free spotlight coaching to a volunteer. And you'll also have the opportunity to submit a question in advance. If maybe you want to be shy and you don't want to be spotlit, but you want your question answered, he'll also role play that. So I am super excited about this because it gets us the chance to actually see what coaching looks like. And it also gives you, the people who are our fan club, you are part of our One Thing family, lots and lots of views of what living the one thing looks like. Because even though the principles are true across the board, how I implement them might be different than how Brent does. They might be different than Roger or whoever else is on this call. We do little things differently because that's how we've built our habits, and it can be very, very instructive. All right, so back to our lesson now that I've done that little announcement. I was excited about that. I think I counted, Chris, I'm just staring at you now because you're my screen. I think 30 different people out of the 41 actually mentioned the spotlights as something they missed and wanted to do. So if you don't know what it is, definitely check it out next week. It's free. It's just more value for you. So here are what I've kind of identified as 4 steps for you to kind of get your routine back on track. And if you're one of the lucky ones that didn't get knocked off track this summer, it's just a good thing to have in your back pocket. So, I've got a new mouse pad, so I keep hitting it the wrong way. First, I want you to do is identify exactly what's changed with your schedule. What's changed in your routine? A lot of times we focus on the thing that's not happening, but we're looking at the actual result of that, right? The side effects, not the cause. So let's go to causation. What actually changed? When I talk to the people I work with, drop-off and pickup times have changed. I read a really great satire about how they were like issued a brand new way to drop off your kids, and every grade had a 5-minute spot. And if you didn't hit the 5-minute spot, just circle the block. And I just had PTSD from being in a drop-off time and circling the block, waiting for my chance to get into the queue and actually jump in and jump out and get our kids with all the rules. What is that? Is that for you? Do they have new practices, new sports? What changed? 2, and I'm going to get this down, identify what may have changed with your environment. This is something that Jordan coaches me a lot of times. The schedule might have changed, but maybe that's not the cause. Are there new people that have been introduced to your environment? I know one of the people said they started a new job. 2 people, I think, in the comments. So great, you might have a new commute, but the commute may not be the problem. It might be that you're surrounded by different people, or that your actual work environment has changed, and that could be the cause. So the first 2 questions we're looking at here, we're trying to get to the heart of the problem. What has changed in your schedule and what has changed in your environment? And I think about 9 times out of 10, one of the 2 could be getting you very close to the truth. What's the one thing you can adjust to make a difference? Once we identify the thing that's really changed, ask the one thing question. What's my one adjustment? Like, I will tell you with my commute, every time school comes and goes, my commute changes a little bit, and I cannot complain about it. Those who work with me know I have a very short commute. But I also know that if I leave the house 10 minutes later than I normally do once I figure it out, it can cost me 20 minutes in traffic. There's only 2 ways out of my neighborhood, and if I miss the optimal window, I go from having a 10-minute commute to a 25-minute commute. And those little things, like what's the adjustment I can make? And usually within a week or 2, I can figure these things out and go, okay, we just have to walk out the door with the kids by this time, and we will be on time unless there's an accident or something beyond my control. What in your environment, what in your schedule can you make an adjustment? Maybe the thing that you used to do in the morning before your core habit needs to move to the evening. What can you adjust that you can control, that you can now make an accommodation for the thing that's not happening anymore? And finally, can you time block that thing? I'm not really changing any of the rules. I'm only asking you to identify a different mindset that I addressed a little earlier. Try not to focus on what you lost in your old routine, and give yourself credit for building the new one. It happens, and it happens to the best of us. Identify the root cause, and then identify your best guess at the adjustment, and then time block it and start living it. It doesn't have to be super complicated. Now, I'm going to pause right here. Super simple, but it's also something that I've never taught. So far, has anybody here had any ahas or takeaways so far? And if so, would you mind sharing in the comments? As Jordan would say, he's very practiced at the art of silence. Did you have any ahas, any takeaways so far?
Jay, hi, it's Sue.
Hi, Sue. Thank you.
Hi, I'm sitting here. My brain's going. I mentioned in the last chat question that I normally do my steps in the morning. I'm a morning person, and in the summertime, it's light outside at 5 a.m. So I'm out walking. I can schedule my first call starting at 7 or 7:30, easily meet that and have a bigger day, a more productive day. All of a sudden now it's not light until 6:30, and I have a real issue with being outside in my neighborhood and surrounding areas in the dark. I don't like to do that. So now I've just pushed my whole day back. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, instead of rearranging my entire schedule all day to make up for that, maybe the best thing to do is just simply rearrange my steps for afternoon and continue to start my day at 7:30. I mean, how simple is that? But I hadn't thought about that as being an option.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Last night I had 70 entrepreneurs, and if any of y'all have ever done our scavenger hunt, the main thing that it illustrates is how quickly we jump to action without taking a moment to think about strategy. And if you step back, and that's part of the reason of asking so many questions. When we step back and ask the question, well, what is changed and what should change? You come up with a better answer. So there's one part of me that says you're very attached to the morning walk in that particular light. And I get that. Like, walking in the morning is a joy if you get to do it. But I know if the sunlight changes a lot seasonally where you are, that can be a problem, especially if you're rural and it might actually not be so safe to be walking on the roads in the dark. But moving your whole day to accommodate that may not be the best thing. I would also say, could you just flip the first two appointments? Is there something that you could do before the walk, right? And so that you could still capture that. There's usually 2 or 3 choices we're not even considering because we lock on to the first good choice we see versus asking, is this the one choice we should make? So thank you for sharing and being vulnerable. I'm looking now, it looks like we got a few people had to think about it. So Michael, you're gonna have to tell me about the concept of rebounding, because all I can think about is basketball, and it's not even basketball season. So I'm
Well,
assuming
it
this
is a
rebounding.
basketball concept of
Okay.
how you interpret the misses. I mean, Michael Jordan is usually the one that people refer to of it was about not being perfect and expecting some of your shots to not fall. And so I was just thinking about the concept of how do I interpret this falling apart and stay in curiosity as to what is different, because it's just a different attitude than anger and bitterness. And I wish things had never changed because now they've rocked my boat.
Mm-hmm.
Versus what exactly did change. And then you're just, there's just more grace. And so the rebounding concept is they count rebounds for a reason because they are super important because not all shots are going to fail or are going to go in.
And like you're talking about something happened to you, and you can focus on what happened in the past that you couldn't control, or focus on how you're going to feel about it going forward, right? So moving to a healthier mindset matters a lot. I want to really quickly slow down, be more mindful. Love that. Recognize there's change and disruption. Andrew. Yeah, that is obvious. Hey, Bernie, welcome. If it's your first time here, hopefully you were able to show up and catch some of the early stuff. If not, know that when we launch our webinars every third Thursday of the month, we usually kick it off with just a brief overview if you're not terribly familiar with what we teach. But there will be a replay in our Facebook group. And if you missed that, you can go back and watch it. But welcome. It looks like you changed and you made an adaptation because of it was very busy, but then you got your piece back. So congrats for being back maybe in the old rhythm, if I'm reading that correctly. Okay, Myrna, that's like too much of a good thing, maybe, with your husband retired and wanting to hang out instead of let you work. Again, environment change, right? Schedule didn't change, but your environment changed.
Yeah, I think if I just get in the office and then we can plan our recreation after work, because I didn't retire.
There you go. Sharon, I'm processing yours. I have to do. Yeah. Well, we talked about that a little bit. It's going to be normal for when you're trying to get back into a routine for it to feel like it's a little harder and take a little longer. And that's one of the main ahas for me. And I want to thank, for Gretchen Rubin for kind of giving me the right framework to think about it. It is harder. It doesn't just feel harder. It is actually harder. And maybe we need to give ourselves a little bit more grace. And I really don't think it's good to compare ourselves today to where we were right before the habit broke. There is a natural ramp up that's going to have to happen. And just trust that once you start knocking over the dominoes, you'll start building up your momentum again. Trying to make sure there's no hidden questions. Boom. Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to power through here to the end, and I'm going to just do a quick
Jay.
reminder, and then we'll have a full-on Q&A. Who's that? Who said Jay?
Hi, Jay. It's Katana from Louisiana. I could not type in the chat because I'm the one picking up the kids, so we're still in the car. But I just have to say, because I wanted you to know this, I so appreciate you doing this, teaching yourself. And I wanted to say I had a lot of takeaways, but the thing that you just hit on the head, I didn't want that to go like unnoticed by people. What you just said about a lot of times we can be so into want to take action, but not taking enough time for the strategy. That was like, boom. I mean, major aha. And I didn't want to interrupt you, but I had to say that. That was like gigantic. Thank you for that.
I'm going to give you 2 gratitudes. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for not trying to type while you drive with your kids. We all thank you for that. So for being safe. And you know, these are meant to be interactive. And so I love the comments. That's how I would probably do it. But if you need to unmute, fire away. Let me share one more announcement, and then we've got some time. I told you it'd be about 40 minutes. We are exactly 40 minutes into the hour. I'm going to share one last announcement, and then I'm going to open it up. I'm here for the next 20 minutes. If you want to stick around, if you want to play Stump the Author, I'll do my very best. Let me see here. Boom. And, oh. And of course, I am clicking on all the wrong buttons. Hold on. I've only got like 5 PowerPoints open because I've done, Carly can attest, I think this is now the 6th presentation this week. There we go. All right.
Oh, Jay, just for the record, my 10-year-old was also in the car listening to this. And he said, Mom, that was so good. Like, I could resonate with that. He said, because at school, when I'm faced with a problem, a lot of times I think I'm going to just take action and I don't even think it through first. So see, generational. Thank you.
You know, Katana, that's a hack. I remember when we were driving to Disney World with the kids, I stuck on Grit by Angela Duckworth. And the kids pretended not to hear anything that was going on. But whenever we would stop to eat, we ended up getting to talk about it. So environment matters, right? The environment we create for ourselves and the environment we create for our kids. So kudos to you for that. And thank you for the kind words. Just a reminder, folks, because the time is running out. We are selling lots of tickets. We have added something really cool. Johanna, I'm going to get to you in just a second. We've added multiple live stream options. So if you lead a team, we have a group package now. A lot of folks have said that with the economy where it's been lately and everything that's going on, they may not be able to make it to Austin to join us in person, but they want to join us with their team. So definitely use the QR code. Take a second, take a snapshot if you want to check it out later, or just go to our website, theonething.com. I would just be remiss. This is going to be our last in-person goal-setting retreat. This will be the 8th year that Wendy and I have hosted it, and I'm super excited to share it. It will still be a process that we do with our coaches, with our training, but we're going to change the format substantially. And next year, we're going to have really, really cool events for you to go to, just not this one. So this is the last chance for in-person. And if you want to watch it remotely from the comfort of your home or go on vacation to do it with your special someone or your team, we have all those options available for you. All right. Now, I know we had someone with their hand raised. Chris, help me identify them.
It was me.
Johanna.
It was me.
Yeah,
There we go.
Hey, I think the aha moment for me was when you talked about your teenager and his hours, because I have a team. I'm 36 years old. I've been in the industry for about 10 years, and my time to start the day is completely different than my boys. They are in the ages of 18 to 25, and I think I was losing my mind and making probably overwhelming them because I wanted to start the day early and that's not them. And I think that just gave me a little grace for myself and for them to understand that we don't all start the day at the same time and it's okay.
I love that. And you know what? They won't always start the day the way they do in college. I mean, come on. I remember sleeping till 12 o'clock in college. I don't even know how that's possible anymore. I mean, I don't think I can sleep past 7 a.m. unless I'm completely
Exactly.
sick, right? But I've also spent 55 years training my body towards a different cycle. Not 55, call it 35, since whenever that was. But I've definitely trained myself to a different system, and they will too, right? Someday they'll have an 8 a.m. job and they'll have to adjust. But right now they get to enjoy it. The challenge then becomes, as parents, where do we find the common time? I've got a lark and I've got an owl. How do I get them to sit at the same table with the rest of us?
No, Jay, by my boys, I mean my real estate team. I have a
Oh,
team of boys. Yes, the
I thought
18-year-old
you meant your
happens to be
actual
my
boys.
son. No, well, the 18-year-old on my team is my actual son. But again, I'm 36 and I have 5 agents under me between the ages of 18 and like 25. So I have some adjusting to do.
You know what? It's just going to make you a better parent and a better leader. I think a lot of the skills that work in one area work in the other. And if you show up with a little grace and compassion and also make sure that there's some accountability, you're going to be just fine. But that actually is pretty funny. I would say, though, it's a challenge. Like, where do we find the common ground? I do think if they're on
Yeah.
your team and you're going to have team meetings and you're the boss, you get to declare when that is. But if that person who likes to sleep till noon is your top producer, you may choose to maybe find a middle ground where you don't lose someone who's highly productive just because they have an alternate sleep cycle. That choice is yours. That's why you got to be a business owner.
Thank you.
Anybody else got a question? We have people showing up. It's like maybe they popped out and are coming back. I keep seeing admit. I see a question from Tom. Let me read it. Jay, from all the books you have, I see your bookshelf. What are your 3 or 4 most impactful ones for you outside of the one thing? Man, I read like 50 books a year, and that's hard, but I will tell you, and maybe I can take a picture of this and we can share it in my Facebook group. Kind of this shelf right here is a shelf that I'm very hesitant to loan out because they're books that not only did I love, but I tended to take a lot of notes. So, I mean, I've got Atomic Habits. There's a book called The 6 Thinking Hats. It's an old book, but I like the mindset that it has. I've got Good to Great. I've got 4-Hour Work Week. This is a great book for me. It's called The $1 Trillion Coach. It was the guy who coached the founders of Google and Apple all at the same time. And I love reading stories about great coaches. And he also, this might offend you, but I liked it. He was actually really good at cussing, like better than a sailor. And it made me laugh out loud many times while reading the book. But he used it all the time. Anyway, I'll send a picture. I'll share that with our team if you want, and go to our Facebook group and you can kind of take a look at them. But here's the thing. You need to read for what you need. Read for what you need if it's nonfiction. Now, I know I'm a writer. I can be an education junkie, but I still look up and I try to read for what I need. I want to read a few books every year on relationships. I'm going to read about 5 books on finances because I'm in business and I need to understand how money works, right? I'm going to have a couple of areas that every single year I'm going to have to read. And because we wrote one of the best books out there, one of the premier best-selling books on productivity and purpose, I'm going to read that category as best I can. So books like Atomic Habits, I'm going to follow Michael Hyatt and his full focus stuff. I'm going to look at that because that's the playing field I'm on and I want to be competitive. So as much as I can say these are books I would highly recommend, I don't know that I can recommend them to you, Tom, unless those are the books that you need. They were just the books I needed. Does that make sense? I love it. But I love the question because we'd be here for the next 6 hours if we just had a full-on book conversation, because that's my love language.
Hey, Jay, can I share something I do when I'm coaching that helps people identify maybe what books they should seek out first?
Please.
Or what areas? So something I do is if you take a look at your goals, if you've done some good work to determine, let's say, what you want to accomplish this year, maybe even 3 years or 5 years, but let's just focus on this year for now. And then ask the question, if you were going to earn the right to achieve that goal, what are the top 3 skills that you would need to develop to make that possible? And then pick the one. What's the one that if you focused on it would give you the greatest leverage? And then you can seek out a book or a piece of content or some training that would support that skill, but let it connect to your goals and work your way backwards from there so that you can figure out the most important skill.
That's good. I like that, Chris. That's a nice convention. Like I've been maybe doing it so long that I'm shortcutting it, and you broke it down in some steps for us. Like think about the skills that get you to the knowledge that you need and the outcomes that you need.
Mm.
Oh, Julie, like I like that you like that. When I said it, I was like, maybe that's something I need to write down. Read for what you need. I'll have to write an article about that. How do you take notes on books you read? Asked Lauren. And Lauren, you'll have to tell me. I had a friend named Kathy Nye that spelled her last name like you. Is your last name pronounced Nye or something else?
It is pronounced Nye, yes, Jay.
I have what is the background that becomes Nye? I'm from the South and I mispronounce most things, but that doesn't seem like that should work.
I know, I've gotten that my entire life.
Okay. I write in the books. So how many of you have a hardcover copy of The One Thing? Right? Do you see that there's little pencil marks all through there? Our designer looked at all of our favorite books and realized that Gary and I write in our books. There's even a name for it. It's called marginalia. And we tried to make the margins large enough that you could write in it. We did that on all of our books. We actually designed the books to have larger than normal margins because we write in our books. And here's the reason. If I love a book, and when I go back to it, I'm going to try to pick one that's got a lot in there. I'm going to have all of my bookmarks, and I'm going to have page numbers in the front that are the main takeaways. So I can pick this up and say, what were the 4 or 5 things that I really needed to know from this? And I know one of them is going to be the 3 priorities, because that was before I knew about the one. And another one was his model for delegation. And I had never heard about virtual assistants before I read this book. So what I want to do was, without having to read all 400 pages again, what were the things I chose to carry forward from this book? So I tend to read with a pencil in hand when I'm reading nonfiction. And then I can go at the end of the chapters, if I have to, write in the margins. And just that way I can flip through the book and get the big lessons. So nothing fancy. I do know friends that use Kindle and they highlight and they take notes. My challenge with that is I'm tactile learner. I like to physically hold things that I'm learning, and I would probably just export it all and then print it up anyway. So I just go ahead for nonfiction. I start with books. Fun question. I think we got time for maybe one more. But I am trying to time block. How do I cringing? So Shraddha, can I get you to unpack that a little bit? If I'm saying your name correctly, is time blocking, go ahead. Yeah.
So I read this book, and I am really, I tried to do the 20% of the 20% of the 20%. And the one thing that I need to do is I'm going to travel to India very soon. And before I go, I need to clear my real estate exam. And that's like my target. But I'm working full time right now. I'm freelancing with other agents as a transaction coordinator. And I find it really difficult to actually time block into my studies, which I cannot stop thinking about it. I'm constantly on it. I'm a morning person. I can wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, but I am still cringing to, actually do that time block and work on it. So, how do I get through this?
There's a lot to unpack there, and I'm trying to pick up all the pieces. And Chris, you can jump in too. I'm not throwing it to you, but here's where I would start. You said something that's very important, that you said, I would get up at 4 a.m. If your days are full, you said you're full-time freelancing doing something else while you're trying to do this new thing.
Right.
You probably have to say no to something.
Okay.
Just say yes to the new thing. If you're just trying to add the new thing, which is studying for an exam, which I don't know what it's like where you are, but I know that it was I I studied a lot and they still gave me lots of questions that were never in the materials that I covered. So I don't know, but I passed and I hope you do too. But you have to have enough time to prepare for the exam.
Right.
I tell people usually get up an hour earlier every day. You don't
Okay.
have to do it forever. That might
Mhm.
mean that you give up some of your me time if reading a book at night or watching a show or hanging out so that you can get the rest you need to do that thing. I
Okay.
tell the story of Toni Morrison, the author. She was a single mom, had 2 kids.
Mhm.
She was a full-time editor. I believe she was at Random House or Bandom Doubleday. I can't remember. And she was trying to write her first novel. She was very clear that for her to accomplish that goal, which took a very long time, she had to get up early enough and do all of the writing she could do that day before anyone said the word mom in the house.
Right.
Right? Because once that happened, all bets were off. Her number one priority became, I'm going to be a mom. I'm going to be present. I'm going to get him to school. Then I have to do my job so I can pay our rent and put food on the table. And at night, I'm worn out, so I'm going to bed. But there
Mhm.
was something that she gave up to get that extra hour or two. So I would look for that and also know it's temporary,
Right.
right? Once you get the exam done, you can reclaim that thing. So start tracking it and building some rewards and milestones to reward yourself. But that's where I would go first.
Okay. I got to lessen my socializing. I got my answer.
There you go.
You knew exactly what you had to say no to. There you
Mhm.
go.
All right.
But
Thanks.
how long until the exam? How long does this have to be?
I'm sorry.
How long do you have until you take the exam?
A month, I would think. A month.
Okay.
A few more days.
So instead of giving up the socializing, why
Mhm.
don't you cut it substantially? Say, I'm only going to go out on Fridays and Saturdays, or I'm only going to go out on Wednesdays and Tuesdays. Like pick a couple of days so that you don't feel, because then you'll resent the work.
Right.
But you also don't have to go out all the time. So find a balance that you can live with and then go knock that exam out of the park.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you. Thanks for offering such a good specific thing. Katana, we have next month, just starts to know, our webinars will be on the 3rd Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. Central Time in the United States. That is going to be when we do our free teaching. Next month, to give you a free preview, I'm going to be working with a good friend of mine that runs a very large community for the neurodivergent, ADHD. And we're going to be talking about tips and strategies for people to live the one thing who have ADHD. And entrepreneurs, that's a very large percentage of us. Some of us undiagnosed, some of us who are, but we're going to give you some good hacks for how to conquer your ADHD and still focus and get your one thing done. And his name's Tyler, and I can't wait to share him with you. Next week on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central Time, Jordan Freed will be hosting our very first in many years coaching spotlight with a volunteer that might be on this call. So we hope to see you all there. Block that time off next Wednesday, and that'll be the pattern. 3rd Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. will be the free webinar. The following Wednesday at 3 p.m., we will have a coaching spotlight until you tell us you want something different.
Hey Jay, quick correction for next Wednesday. I believe it's 11:30 Central.
Oh, are
for
we doing
this
it at
one.
11 for the first one? Okay, got it.
For this one, because the short timeline to put it together, but you're correct moving forward.
Thank you for that, Chris. Thank you for that assist.
You're welcome.
All right. I'm trying to check. Do we have, look in the comments with me, Andrea or Chris. Is there one last question we can take for those that are hanging on to the very bitter end? I want to reward them.
Roger asked, when will foundations start again? And so context for the audience, foundations, I'm assuming this is what you're asking, was a course that we ran last year, which was kind of a one-stop shop download on the One Thing system. Keep tuned in, Roger, because we've got a potential really exciting course coming out here in the future, which would be a great opportunity to jump back in. And I think it will be even better. A lot of lessons learned and enhancements from that course. So it'll have a different name, but I think it'll be even better.
Yes, I'm super excited about that. The big reveal, we have a lot of fun stuff coming, folks. Y'all need to pay attention. In November, we're making big changes to the podcast. We'll then have the goal setting retreat and we'll do a reveal on what next year's in-person event will be. And as Chris was alluding to, our brand new signature training. So lots of exciting stuff in the next couple of months. And in the meantime, I just want to thank you all for showing up. You can find us and ask questions in the Facebook group. Mark is always there, one of our coaches and trainers, and I drop in at least once a week. If you tag me, I'll be sure to show up. Thanks for your attention today, and go knock out your one thing, folks.
Bye, everybody.